The mic or what do you
No,
think?
it doesn't matter. Like if it's All right, welcome to the G2K podcast. This is episode number 9, and I'm with my good friend Roy.
What's up? What's up? Here comes the persona.
Here comes the persona. How you doing, brother?
Not bad, not bad.
Thank you for coming. I appreciate your time, and yeah, welcome.
Pleasure.
So
we've been talking about
we're
this
gonna
for a
get
while,
we're gonna
so-
get to know you and in the most casual and organic way possible. Yeah, no filters, just random conversations. You and I always have pretty deep conversations that
Yeah.
stem into like multi-faceted subjects. But
Yeah.
like so far we've talked about, like even off camera, covered a lot of different things.
Yeah.
So yeah, tell everybody a little bit about yourself and what you do, who you are.
Oh man, that's.
Where do you begin?
Where do I begin? I think I begin right now in the present, which is.
The present moment is the perfect place to begin.
I think it's the beginning and the end, but really, I'm just. I'm happy to sit down with you, because we've been talking about this for a while.
Yeah, it's a long
And-
time coming. But
Yeah, and I think it was one of those things where I think I messaged you and I was like, "Hey, what are you doing?"
Right.
And then you just started spitting all these really, like, I remember getting the first text from you going like, "Who is this? What's going on?" I started
Right.
reading it. I was like, "All right, whoever this is," and I realized it was you. And I was
Right.
like, I have to get along. I have to meet this guy, and then
In
yeah.
terms of what was the messages I was sending you? It was like, I guess, deep introspective stuff, right?
100%. Yeah.
Okay.
exactly.
In terms, I remember now.
Yeah, and I think you had a little group going as well, and
Yeah.
I think you were doing yoga and meditation in the morning.
Yeah, I was teaching a little bit of mindfulness and breath work stuff. Oh yeah, that's right. You messaged me or you contacted me through seeing me guiding a practice.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I was like, that looks cool, right?
We
So,
still need to do one of those breathing sessions. We might do one after this podcast.
let's
Are you
do
down?
it. Let's do it.
All right, sick.
Yeah, I love doing those things, but who I am, wow, that's something I feel like everybody's always, it's an unending search, right?
Universal unknown. What is
Yeah.
I?
Well, I guess maybe I can talk about some things that I'm really passionate about right now. And in the present, I think I was telling you earlier about just this carnivore diet, and I think more and more people are starting to catch on to this, or at least hear about it, and it's something that's central in my life right now. Certainly.
So have you always been on the health tip in terms of optimization of the mind, body, and
Yeah, I think I think as I got older, it became more of a focus. Whereas when you're young, I feel like there's so many other things that you're focused on, and also when you're young, you're able to bounce back. Let's say you go out drinking, you party a little bit hard. You don't get enough sleep. It's okay, right?
Right.
You don't feel it as much. But as you get older, I think it's just for some people like myself, I don't feel like I'm older, right? I still feel young on the inside, but
your meat vehicle is
your meat vehicle.
just like
Exactly.
sometimes the engine lights and like change oil signs come on. That's how I see it, to be honest.
Yeah, or you're just like you're stuck on the side of the road in a ditch
Right.
going, "What happened? What happened?"
And then someone comes to you, is like, "Hey, have you heard of the carnivore diet?"
Well, you know what? It wasn't as much like that, but I think I just always been somebody who really enjoyed experimenting and
Right.
just finding out information, right?
So how long have you been doing the carnivore diet for?
Well, I kind of on a part-time basis started last January. So I broke my hand in this little accident, and I went. So I had a cast on, and it was at around the same time that I found out about the carnivore diet. So, and I couldn't exercise, I couldn't do anything. So I decided that, hey, maybe this is a good time to start eating steak every day for every meal. So that's what I did.
So what led you to discovering the carnivore diet, and like in regards to you breaking your hand, did you like, was it something like someone told you that, oh, you heal faster, or?
No, it actually was
like
completely
unrelated.
Yeah, completely unrelated. I think I heard about the carnivore diet first through the person who I think is doing more edumacating than all the universities in the world, which is Joe Rogan.
Joe Rogan.
Yeah,
okay. I thought you were gonna drop Jordan Peterson, because apparently I think he dabbled in the carnivore diet.
He's on that right now.
Yeah.
And it's actually a combination because his daughter Michaela Peterson, I think, I don't know who was first, but she was on the Joe Rogan show and talked about this carnivore diet, and I know that she had a lot of different kind of ailments. I think she had an autoimmune disorder, and I think she had something like hip surgery 3 or 4 times when she was really young, and as she grew up, she just had a lot of problems, right? Health problems, and I don't know where she found out about the carnivore diet, but she started going on that, and apparently, magically, it started resolving some of these issues or helping her, relieve some of these issues in some ways. And so Joe, being the guy who's kind of curious about everything as well, had her on the podcast talking about it. So I heard about that, and I thought it was kind of preposterous, right? Because I've
just eating meat
for every meal, like, what about vegetables? What about, vitamins? What about everything that everybody talks about?
Yeah, it goes against the grain of what everybody tells you to do, right?
Absolutely. So that was kind of I kind of wrote it off for a while, but then I started reading more and more into it, and also just going back, I'd been a vegan for about just over a year, like 13, 14 months in my 20s, and also I was pescatarian, so I enjoyed trying those things just to see how my body would react, and to be able to be in other people's shoes. So when they talk about veganism, when they're talking about being pescatarian, I can understand where they're coming from, what their lives are like. So and when this carnivore thing came up, I was just really deeply interested, and as I read more about it, and I think reading about Jordan Peterson, Michaela's father, going on that whole carnivore diet and it resolving a lot of his autoimmune issues, I was like, why not? Let's try it. I love meat, so why don't we just try that? And when I first started trying that, I actually went out to this place called Alex Meats out of Markham, where I live close to, and I started learning a little bit more about beef. And there's a great guy, the owner Mike there, who essentially introduced me to a few different cuts. So I started off on a baseball steak. It's an Australian baseball steak that was just incredible. Very, very lean and delicious and easy to prepare. I think that's really important when you're busy. And I started eating that every day, and I just started losing weight.
So you would eat it for breakfast, lunch, dinner?
Breakfast, lunch,
snack.
And dinner. Actually, what was interesting was, I can eat a lot, and over the years, I definitely don't eat as much as I did in my 20s. But I used to eat a lot. But as soon as I started eating meat and steaks, I would have a couple eggs and a steak for midway through the day, and right after an intermittent fasting session, usually 16 hours or 14 hours, depending on the day, and then I just wouldn't be hungry.
Right.
I just wouldn't be hungry for a long time. I also took coffee with coconut. What is it? Coconut oil.
MCT oil.
Yeah, MCT oil.
Okay.
And I think apparently that kind of
suppresses your hunger. And
exactly.
Gives you a sustained energy source.
Yeah.
So you would have eggs and steak. Like, would you count your calories, or
no,
just
not at all,
depending on hunger levels?
That's exactly what it was. So the little that I read about it was really the fact that you eat whenever you feel hungry.
Right.
And I kind of like that because, it's just, it made things a little bit simpler, and I found myself eating roughly twice a day. That's it. So reduced the amount of time that I had to take to prepare for things, and, so simple, like meat on the pan or on the grill, and then like you're eating 10 minutes later. It's great.
So did it affect you on a mental level as well, or is it just physical?
Yeah. And I was actually, I would say that I was actually freaked out a little bit. Like I didn't really know what to expect. You know, when I was all my life, really, I haven't really been eating beef at all. Like I've eaten more beef in the last year than I have for the rest of my life. You know, the time before since I was born. And whenever I ate steaks back in the day, I used to have stomach issues, you know, just like really bad stomach issues. So I kind of stayed away from big chunks of meat.
Right.
But I think within the first week, just my body began acclimatizing to the diet.
Adapting to digesting,
100%. Like the first few days, it felt weird, and you know, it wasn't pretty sometimes, right?
Yeah, Joe Rogan talks about that as well in terms of like washroom situations.
Oh man, like washroom situations. It was just.
I can only imagine if you're just eating eggs and steak.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, I don't know, maybe this isn't for me, right? Because you know, Asian diets are very different, and sometimes we need to eat to kind of what our.
So where do you get fiber from though, in terms of?
That's the thing. That's what I asked back in the day as well. I was like, you know, how do you get fiber? You know, what about digesting? Like, you know, how do you make your poo? You know, but so far I found no issues in terms of, from what I've read, you know, a lot of times you don't really need too much fiber.
Okay.
And when you do eat, you know, highly fibrous vegetables or kind of black beans and things with a lot of fiber content in there, it makes your body work much harder.
Right.
And with eating meat, you know, sometimes I've freaked out because I don't, you know, we're already talking about poo, but you know, I don't poo, like they're not as you know, immense as they were before. It's not as often either.
Right.
So you get freaked out because I think, you know, we've all heard about how red meat just stays in your stomach. And I realized that was probably not true, or otherwise I'd be massive because I've been eating a lot of red meat. So if it all was stored in my stomach, there's no way. And what I read about that was really that, you know, your body's absorbing it. That's what it is. And that's why you're not, you know, going to the washroom as often.
That makes sense.
And as far as like just changes, wow, there were so many. You know, I played sports all my life, and I have a whole bunch of hockey injuries that, you know, once you hit a certain point, and the weather's changing, especially when it goes from kind of fall to winter, you feel it. You feel it in your limbs, you feel it in your joints, and you know when you have those old injuries.
Right.
They were all like magically, I didn't even realize they were gone, but one day I was like, oh, why aren't I hurting? You know, it should be normal, but that went away. I used to have really bad acne when I was in high school, and I have a whole bunch of scars from it, and I just felt like my face cleared up, but I knew that it wasn't that because they're old scars.
Right.
But they started to really, they look great and felt really good as well, smoother than ever. I also felt like I was a lot more primal in every aspect, really.
Testosterone levels are through the roof.
I think so. I mean, I don't really know.
If you're eating steak every day, I can only imagine. Yeah.
Definitely, I was running hot all the time. Like you can feel it. Sometimes you can even like hear your heart or feel your heartbeat.
Right.
In a stronger way.
No,
right?
I know what that feels like.
Do you know what I mean?
I've been to Korean barbecues and Japanese grills, and maybe a day or two after, I feel that sensation where.
Yeah. So it almost sometimes scares you a little bit. And you're like, am I having a heart attack? But it wasn't that, and also just in terms of focus, as it relates to even vision, hearing, smelling, like all my senses. It was just so weird. I felt as though that I was just a lot more, I felt like some sort of animal.
Oh, yeah, like, that makes sense.
Like a hunting beast.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess if you're eating a bunch of diverse things, and like you mentioned, the black beans and whatever, like when your body is processing it and in a more difficult fashion, that takes a lot of energy out of you, right?
Yeah.
So when your body's used to a similar diet over and over again, you have all that energy remaining in a way, if that makes sense. So maybe that's why you...
Yeah. And I think it's also, you know, being Chinese, you know, our the basis for meals is rice, white rice.
Right.
Right? So and a lot of bread and pasta, kind of noodles and whatnot. So really, really carby. And I used to associate being satiated and full with wanting to pass out or just like rolling myself onto the couch.
Lethargic feeling, yeah.
Right? So that lethargic feeling. And I realized I never got that. I just felt good. You know, sometimes I wanted to just like kind of scream, primal scream after having steak.
Barbarian
style. Exactly. And it was just, it felt great. And for me, also the sleeping, I didn't think it would affect my sleeping, but it did as well. I would have these crazy meat dreams.
Yeah, it was a lot of iron, magnesium, zinc, and those are all prime in terms of getting quality deep sleep, so that makes sense.
Yeah, but within that transition, I remember just having the craziest dreams. Maybe the first week or two, I had crazy dreams, and they were incredibly vivid. Just ones that I was aware that I was dreaming. I think
like
lucid
dreaming. Okay.
And it was just fun.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like...
So did you have lucid dreaming? That's another subject we can dive into, because I've dived into that a little bit myself, but from willfully trying to get myself into lucid dreams.
Yeah.
But, okay, so being on the carnivore diet, that's one of the pros, I guess.
Yeah, and I felt as though, you know, in the first week I lost 8 pounds, I think 7 or 8 pounds, and within the first 10 days I lost like 10 pounds. It was a pound a day, and I realized part of that was that, you know, I was eating really, really lean beef. So baseball steaks, they tend to be very lean. They're not like, you know, like prime rib or anything like a ribeye, and there's lots of fat. So I think that was part of that, being full, but having a calorie deficit at the same time. So it was like the best of both worlds. And also the amount of salt that I started ingesting. Before that, I was not really a big salt guy. Like I would kind of be like everybody else and be like low sodium. But I realized that salt isn't a bad thing. So there's some new articles and books that are coming out. I think the Salt Fix is one of them, and it's about the fact that sometimes we don't get enough
sodium.
Salt. Exactly, our electrolytes and whatnot.
Yeah. I think Aubrey Marcus talks about that in one of his books. Have you read? It's called Own the Day, and it talks about like every morning having, I think, some salt with water and lemon juice.
Yeah. And I think he puts in sea salt, right?
Yeah, sea salt, Himalayan sea salt. And he makes the reference in terms of the Romans when they would go out like on long journeys, like they'd fight for salt, like like get pouches of salt, and that would retain water in their body as they would walk like for days or whatever.
Exactly.
And give them that energy to sustain and fuel them.
Yeah.
Which is crazy, like, because there's a lot of misconceptions, and even when I was growing up, for example, like in schools and stuff, do you remember those pyramids that they would, the pyramid chart of like the food pyramids? Yeah. It's like you need like, what was it, for the specific servings of different food groups, like dairy, breads, and like.
Yeah.
But now when you look at that, it's like that means nothing.
It really means nothing, and even like the Canadian Food Guide is so, you know, it's so, I just don't, you know, I don't know how they come up with that sometimes. Right? But hey, you know, what's cool these days is that you can learn, like we were talking about.
Everything on your own, yeah.
You can learn everything on your own. If you want to go deep diving on some sort of topic, you can just go to your computer or go to your phone. So, but yeah, I just found that it really, at that time when I started eating that, I think I was eating that on for 3 or 4 weeks straight. And when I went to, you know how when you get a cast, when you break something, you go in for their first checkup, and then they're like, okay, it's healing fine. If it's not healing well, they have to break it again and try to get it back in.
Yeah.
And I remember the doctor, we took off my cast. It was about 3.5 weeks in, and we took an X-ray, and the doctor looked at it and was like, "When did I last see you?" And I said, "Well, probably around 3.5 weeks ago, 3 weeks, or maybe a month." And she was like, "That? Are you sure?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure I know when I broke my arm." And she was like, "Wow, this looks like 6 weeks, 7 weeks, you're almost completely healed. And then I was like, no, this couldn't be the meat, because I hadn't changed anything else. I wasn't working out.
Okay.
But the only thing I had changed was really my diet. And then so she took it off, and I was on this like temporary cast that wasn't that I could take off, and within another couple weeks I was pretty much healed. That's but I definitely spent another 4 to 6 weeks just slowly getting it back. So I couldn't pick up anything, and when you're in a cast, you can't grip anything, so you lose a lot of muscle and you lose a lot of range of movement.
So how long ago was that?
So I did that until about just to the end of February, whenever Chinese New Year was. I kind of took a week, and Chinese New Year, you can't just be like, I'm just gonna have my steak. I mean, you're missing out hard if that's the case. So I went off there for a little bit, and I just wanted to try initially, and then over the last year, I've kind of spent 2 to 3 weeks at a time being on carnivore, and usually, just for simplicity's sake, I would have a little bit of avocado. I would have some rice, like things I like to eat. I didn't really want to
become super enforced and strict.
Yeah, I didn't want to be stressed out by it.
Exactly.
Really, that's what it was, right? And last year was really busy in terms of work, and I was pretty burnt out, so I didn't want to add more stress. But since then, I mean, just this past week, started it again, and again dropped, I think, in the last 3 weeks of eating mostly carnivore, and last week eating pure carnivore, dropped 7 pounds, I think 7 or 8 pounds already.
Damn.
And feeling great, and just amazing.
I might have to try it out.
I love it. And you think you get sick of eating like steaks every day or like meat every day?
Yeah.
I haven't, and it's.
I think I've had days. Well, I usually, when I cook at home, probably 4 or 5 days where it's been like a steak for dinner. But like during the day, it'll be something else. But
right.
Yeah, I can't see myself getting tired of eating red meat, to be honest. So in comparison to all the other diets that you've had, you said you were vegan and pescatarian, and you've tried carnivore now.
Tried keto as well.
Keto as well. Out of all of those different diets, which ones would you say affected you, like the carnivore right now? Or?
I think they all affected me in different ways. I think a pescatarian was probably the one that was I felt the least change in or abnormalities. I just felt like that was fine. Like I could live off that, no problem. But when I was vegan, I remember it was really difficult to, like, your meals are so different, right? And I remember.
Were you having like the substitute type meals, like where?
Yeah, I would eat tempeh, like, because I love meat, and tempeh was like the closest thing to meat, and you could have sausage and ground meats that was like made of tempeh, and I would have a lot of soy, like soy in Chinese, I guess, cuisine. There's these gluten like textured thing. It's like, I guess, soy based, and they were delicious. They're kind of substitute for meat as well. So I ate a lot of those things. I had a lot of vegetables. At the end of the day, I love vegetables. That's kind of my cheat meal now. Like if I'm, feeling like I want to change it up a little bit, I eat broccoli or I eat cauliflower.
That's unheard of for a lot of people right now.
Oh, it's delicious.
When you're telling them,
like I love food.
You're on the optimized level of lifestyle. So people, generally speaking, love, like for me, I like have pizza every Friday. So
I see your pizza post.
You say you're telling me right now that broccoli is your cheat meal.
You know what? It is. Like I like my broccoli with some garlic and a little bit of oyster sauce. I could eat like
that sounds fucking bomb.
Yeah, with some white rice. That's like insane. Insanely good.
That's what happens when you eat eggs and steak for many months at a time. Broccoli becomes
exactly. You're just like hiding that.
No, that's a good thing though. Like you probably feel great. Cause
you know what? I don't feel good after
broccoli.
After I find that it's more like heavily carb meals. Like I had pizza two weeks ago. I was like,
yeah, in contrast to like pizza and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Even for me, when I have those cheat meals now, I'm starting to be like, is this actually worth it?
Yeah.
Because I know how good I feel when I'm eating clean, and then it's like that one meal. It's like your entire 24 to 48 hours gets affected in terms of even how your mind processes things.
Yeah.
Like there's days where, I guess when I'm consistent, like maybe 4 or 5 days where I'm eating healthy, I've become more jovial and happy and like excited about life. You wake up enthusiastic, ready to get shit done. And then you have pizza, which tastes great. It's like mouth satisfaction for the time being. And then you're like, you wake up the next day, you're like, fuck my life. Like, you get inflammation. That's what it is, right?
That's what it is.
And then you're like, okay, what the fuck? Like, I felt great 2 days ago. Was it worth it? And then you kind of weigh the pros and cons, but that's, I don't know, food is an addiction at the end of the day, right? Like pizza and all those kind of junk foods, they're probably this processed stuff. So that's obviously going to get you hooked on wanting more. Like cheese, apparently they did studies, and it's like kind of like crack in terms of the type of dopamine receptors and the serotonin receptors that get affected by the intake of cheese.
Absolutely.
So it makes sense as to why there's so many pizza fiends.
Yeah.
And I'm one of them, so unfortunately.
Oh, man. Actually, there's
but I'm trying to break the habit.
I actually wanted to take you to this place. It's called Mangia Bevi.
Yeah, I've been there. Yeah.
Have you been there?
Yeah.
Oh man, that place is so good.
I've been to a lot of pizza places in Toronto, and like in that sense, and once you have a proper palate, you get really picky.
Yeah.
So Mangia and Bevi is pretty good.
Yeah.
North of Brooklyn is like one of my tops
at
the moment. Yeah.
I have to check it out.
North of Brooklyn, they have a location. I guess it's near Queen and Bathurst.
Right.
Like just west of there.
Yeah.
And then they have that New York style where it's like the thin crust with seasoned cheese and sauce.
We should order a pizza. Oh wait, we're recording.
Yeah. I have some lasagna in the fridge if you want afterwards.
No.
Mama's lasagna.
That has to be after the podcast. You better have comfortable pillows.
It just turns into a futon. So
Pretty much. I'll turn into a futon. Right?
And then deep dish pizzas. Are you into deep dish pizzas?
Oh, I'm into all pizzas.
Okay, all pizzas. So you're a cheese fanatic then too, or is it just the combination of bread, sauce, and...
Cheese is a weird thing, man. Like, cause I'm pretty lactose intolerant, but I find that when I eat, like, certain types of cheeses, it's fine. Just like certain types of ice creams over the years, like it's fine. But certain ones, just it's just not good, right?
I'm very lactose tolerant.
Yeah.
The amount of cheese I eat, sometimes people are like, "Are you serious?" Like sometimes we order pizza and we get like just for shits and giggles, we'll get triple cheese.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and then it's like this much cheese to this much bread. Where it's not even a pizza anymore. It's like cheese with
cheese bread.
With cheese bread.
Yeah.
With cheese sauce and a little bit of bread.
I remember when we were younger, we used to get the sauce, like half barbecue sauce, half pizza sauce. Have you ever had that?
No.
It's good, man.
Pizza.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Half and half.
Pizza has changed these days, though. I don't know.
It has.
Their ingredients have become pretty
good or
bad. It tastes like cardboard, to be honest.
Really?
But that's what happens when your palate increases. I don't know. When I was a kid, they used to taste amazing. Their garlic dips, though, is uncomparable to any of the other garlic dips out there. But
so good, man. The good old days.
But yeah, cheese is like crack. We went on a little bit of pizza on a pizza tangent, but that's okay.
Nothing wrong with the pizza tangent.
Nothing wrong with the pizza.
Nothing wrong with the pizza tangent.
So in terms of mindset, thought process, and that kind of stuff, so usually we get into these diets and because we want to optimize the meat vehicle.
Yeah.
And your way of feeling good. It's mostly for feeling good, right? So aside from the intake of food and whatnot, what other things do you do to take care of your headspace?
Yeah, well, I think lately part of what I'm doing is actually a recommendation by you in journaling.
Nice.
And I don't do it every night, but I think it's like if I'm in that place where I'm ruminating or anything that's extending or is really taking up a lot of my my attention, then I go there and just write it down.
Right.
So that's really been helping me in small part because I think it's always just about stacking all of your different optimizations and trying to do that naturally and make it a part of your day because some things might work, but you just It's just not for you.
With any of those things, if it's forced, it's kind of hard to do. But when you do something and you notice that it is making you feel a little bit better, like journaling, for example, it's like a way of filtering through your thoughts. And like when you write it, it's almost as if you're getting rid of or like explaining it in detail to yourself, because you read it, you reflect, you kind of go through the thought process and get it out of your system. Whereas if you have those thoughts running through your mind and you don't have any form of output, you'll keep going in an infinite loop, and your mind just becomes exhausted by repeating the same infinite loop over and over and over again. And that applies to, I guess, whether you want to start a project or something that's stressing you out or whatever. But when it comes to being heady and neurotic, usually we only skim the surface. It's hard to go deep because there's so much going on.
Yeah.
So when you write things down and you break things in like subcategories and even more subcategories, it's easier to understand and grasp everything as a whole from a broader perspective.
Yeah.
So how long have you been journaling for so far?
Since I saw you, actually. When was that? Like a couple months ago, maybe?
Birthday or Miss Things?
Miss Things.
Miss Things. That was like
3 months?
3 months, I think.
Yeah, maybe around there.
Before December a little bit.
Yeah.
And I remember when I came down, it was freezing.
Oh, you know what? I think it was like November, December.
End of November-ish. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it's freezing. I appreciate you coming out, because you know how like, anyway, like
not everybody follows through. Those nights where I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna go say what up to this guy.
Awesome. That was awesome. It was.
And we talked a lot about Naval, which I bring up on
amazing.
The podcast, and I speak to a lot of people about, and he's one of like especially in today's society, in terms of mindset and like where to push things towards in the thought process between, I guess, getting rich and being wealthy, and like not just from a financial perspective, but making yourself a brand and like inspiring others, motivating others. And so if anybody's into that kind of stuff, you guys should check out Naval. But yeah, it's like surrounding yourself with those type of individuals and like making an impact on people. And it's kind of like in one of the other podcasts, we're talking about like happenstance, in terms of like when you do something and like it affects even without you knowing. Even when I spoke to you that day, I was just like doing my own thing, like how I express and like having conversation, and that had an impact on you to a point where you're
100%.
You're journaling now, which is crazy, and that makes me feel like it's like, okay, that's fucking sick.
That was amazing.
Yeah, and that's the kind of impact we should have on people, in terms of like, even when I'm going through something or I understand someone who's approaching life in a more optimal level, it's like, okay, what are you doing that I can implement in my life to make my life much easier, and I can become the strongest version of myself.
100%.
And that's kind of why I started the podcast. But it comes down to like that mindset to like, I guess, working out, growing, constant growth when it comes to all aspects of life, and that approach to everything becomes a norm, where it's like optimize, okay, this is becoming more enjoyable and easier, and like, how do I deal with this? And then your surrounding community or your friends and stuff start to get affected by that, or you attract other people that are very like-minded in that sense, and then life just becomes more enjoyable when you're amongst people that are on that same type of path, where it's like, let's become fucking kings and take stuff over in our own journey through this life, whatever this is.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And the Naval podcast, like I think I've spread it out to at least 20 people I know. Yeah. Just certain people I feel like, it would benefit them, or they're the type of people who would be open to it. Mm-hmm. And I'm getting really great feedback as well, so thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem.
And just spreading the word.
That's the power of the internet these days too, and
that's exactly it.
In today's day and age, in this society too, like there's an abundance of information, and a lot of people that I speak to, they're like, yeah, it can be a bad thing, but it's like, but at the same time, if you know what you're looking for and you're open to those type of subjects, it's a beautiful thing.
Right.
So if you're in a rut, if you're, suffering with anxiety, literally you can search different meditations or people that have gone through similar situations, and then you get into that headspace of like, I guess, knowing how to learn and cope with things, rather than because we're so relatable to like people without even knowing it, right?
Right.
And up until, I don't know, maybe like a couple years back, like even myself, I wouldn't think of other people like that. I'm like, I'm going through so much on my own terms. Everybody else is doing fine. In reality, it's like, no, everybody's dealing with some crazy shit.
Yeah.
It's just they put on that mask in society where it's like everything is great. But then when you reach that point where you start altering your own mentality, and like I mentioned in other podcasts, you become player one in your reality, and you realize that whatever decisions and choices you make can impact your perception and your life in a positive manner. People will see that and they'll come to you like, hey, like, you seem like you know something, like you look like you know what you're doing, can you teach me? And it's like, yeah, it's pretty easy actually. And it's like, okay, what are you going through? It's like, I've been there before, believe it or not. It's like, here are the steps I took. Let's do a fucking breathing exercise. Let's get you out of that fight or flight state. What do you want to do? What do you want to... But that's the thing. It's like those people have to be open to accepting those kind of things and having an open mind and to being able to implement that in their lifestyles. And that's the thing, when you're at the gym and stuff like that, in terms of like competitive environments and like whatever it is, people are open. Or like creative headspaces and stuff like that. But yeah, like-minded people attract each other. Like we gravitate towards each other when it comes to that kind of stuff, and that's one of the reasons we bumped into each other. So
yeah, it's crazy. It's amazing.
So that's how the universe works. You just keep doing you, don't worry about anybody else, and you just like grow this little community and turn into a fucking tribe.
That's exactly it. And just I think just to kind of take what you're saying, you know, how we're all, everybody's dealing with something. You know, everybody has their own issues, and you know, not so recently or quite recently in the last year, I've really started to, you know how sometimes you know about things but you don't really fully realize it, you don't really spend the time to deeply understand it or understand it in a deep way, but just really understanding that everybody is in their own bubble, everybody's realities are so different than, you know, from everybody else's. Yeah, you might have commonalities and crossovers of certain things that you're dealing with, or places that you're at, or activities that you're doing, but the way that each person kind of interacts, the way that people kind of mentally and emotionally perceive it, and how they make it a part of them is so different. And I think that's where a lot of breakdown in communication happens between people. Right? Because they assume that your life is like theirs.
Right. No, but having that understanding and being empathetic in that sense too, but knowing that you'll never know how this person will interpret what you're telling them, and being open to that and accepting that is key as well.
Yeah.
Like sometimes people make it seem too simple, where they like, oh, you're depressed, like this is the solution for this. It's like, no, it's like there's millions of factors that contribute to how this person perceives anything in the world, or like whatever situation is, right? Like, I don't know, like just as an example, like how you experience, I don't know, like if you were to describe a color or like the flavor of honey or like peanut butter, you can't. It's like an experience. And emotions and all those kind of things, like how you internalize things and events that happen in life. I can give you advice, but how you implement that advice into your life is based off of who you are and what experiences you've had along the way up until this present moment. So in that sense, we're all very, very different, but at the same time, the emotions and stuff that come with are similar, and stuff that you can relate with. But so when I tell someone, I'm like, come, let's just do a breathing exercise, let me take you out of that sympathetic state of fight or flight, and then afterwards they're like, yo, that was fucking crazy, like I've never felt like this, I'm so aware now. And it's like, okay, now use that and like look back at whatever issues that you've had. Now you'll be able to look at it from a clear headspace, and like you'll be able to resolve these things because you're no longer in that primal monkey brain where you're reacting to everything. And another thing is like practicing what you preach, right? Like all this kind of stuff that I portray to other people too is like things that I'm dealing with myself. And when I notice things that are working for me, it's like kind of like when you're going to a gym and you have a workout routine and you're sharing it with other people. It's like, hey, let's pop in some 21s with the biceps, some dumbbell curls. If you do kettlebell swings, like your functional training will go up. And when it comes to the mind, it's the same thing, right? It's like, okay, how can I share this information that I know and then I know is benefiting me, and it can help other people become more present and stronger as individuals as well.
That's exactly it.
And yeah, as cheesy as it sounds, it all boils down to like love and fear. Like those are the two main components in terms of why we do anything, essentially, right?
Yeah.
And then when you come to that realization where you can approach everything from a loving point, life becomes so much easier. Because like even if you fail or whatever, if you face obstacles in career or life or whatever, it's like, okay, I'm growing, like I'm not perfect.
Yeah.
What can I do to change my approach to whatever the situation may be, so the next time that happens I can be better and well prepared. And then it's like, okay, you notice that progression and that growth associated with that thought process, and that thought process becomes a habit, and then you start to use that newfound skill and tool set and habit to incorporate it into other aspects of your life, and then everything starts to upgrade.
Yeah.
In a way where you become an almighty powerful being that can do whatever they put their mind to.
That's exactly it. I mean, at the end of the day, I've always thought of, you know, of you having your own life, your destiny in your own hands. You are your own God to a certain extent, right? And like you said, you know, a lot of times I find that depending on what household you're born into, or depending on the environments that you're born into, rarely are you given some of these skills, and you're kind of given kind of certain skills that would help you on the day-to-day in terms of accomplishing something, but a lot of times we don't know why, and we don't know how to interpret it from the inside. Right.
It's almost like an iOS or a program, right? It's like, here, we've downloaded this into your system, you're part of this culture, you're part of this society, this tribe, in this part of town.
Yeah.
But then up until recently, because we're so interconnected with the internet and all that kind of stuff, you can do your own researches, and you're like, hey, why are they, like, these people are very similar to us, how come we treat them differently? Or why do we have beef against this tribe? And then you start to question all these things, like, wait, my programming is bullshit.
Yeah.
It's like, these are all agreements that you may force me to like ingest as a kid, because a kid, when the child is born, it's like a clean slate, like a
exactly.
And then there's a very powerful book, I don't know if you've heard of it, I might have recommended it to you, it's called 4 Agreements.
No, I haven't.
So he talks about this, Don Miguel Ruiz, and it's like ancient Toltec wisdom, like that's what they talk about, that kind of stuff, and there's like a whole bunch of different books in relation to that, and he talks about agreements. So he's like, when you grow up, like you make an agreement. It's like, okay, that's my dad, that's my mom, I agree, like this is our culture, like okay, you accept these things. It's almost like you're writing a program and a script for yourself, and that's how you perceive reality.
Yes.
But then none of it's true in a way, because technically speaking, they're doing it based off of what their parents have told them.
Right.
Their parents are doing it based off of what their parents have told them. So it's like a subsequent consequence of all of these generational beliefs and agreements that you've come to. And then no one questions why.
Right.
And then once you start to question why, your illusion of life starts to deteriorate, and you're like, okay, I am infinite potential embodied in human form. So whatever I want to do, I can do it, essentially. Sure, some people might get hurt along the way, like if you disassociate with your culture, religion, all that kind of stuff. But in reality, it's like freedom is our birthright.
Yeah.
So if you're not free and you're trapped and you're always living life abiding by the expectations of others, what's the point of living a life like that? You're pretty much a domesticated human at that point.
Yeah. That's so interesting that you say that, because I was talking about this earlier with my buddy over dinner, and
good conversation.
That's exactly it. This kind of the bursting of the bubble, and one of the things that has really allowed people to kind of burst their bubble, whether they wanted to or not, is the internet. It's the internet, right? And I remember to date myself, really, I remember the life without the internet. I remember life without phones, and I didn't get my first cell phone until I was like 21 or 22. And back then, it was like you can only get texts from your girlfriend going, "Where are you?" Like, now they can like video call.
Digit ones.
Yeah. What is it? Locate my iPhone.
Find my
locate
iPhone,
my boyfriend.
Locate. Yeah.
Right? But yeah. So that information is really incredibly powerful in that, you know, it breaks down the limitations in the mind, and I found that, you know, just from my dealings, I've taught for a long time. I've been teaching for 15 years at colleges and universities, and I notice a lot of, colleges and universities, they're essentially places where, at least traditionally, you are just ingesting data, right? Or ingesting concepts, theories, and all that. And somehow we've turned educational institutions as a ticket to get to the next block, right? So if you don't have that diploma, if you don't have that, certificate,
like
you can't go to the next place.
Game almost, right?
It's almost a game, but what happens and what's lacking is that a lot of times, the experience of going through all of these is what causes a lot of breakdowns and anxiety in people and kids in these students going through, and much of it is derived from the fact that they don't have the tools to deal with it or to understand it. They think that that's it. Like, if they don't get a certain mark on a certain test, that's it. Their life is going to end. Right. Their parents are going to hate them, or like are going to be so disappointed. So there's a lot of those complexes. And then once you get into the world, let's say you've done some of these degrees and you kind of followed what the idea or the general flow of things in that it was established back in the early 1900s, whereby people going through school were set up to work in certain jobs, right, for certain placements. Now, these days we have entrepreneurs. We have some of the most powerful people with the most powerful companies in the world and businesses and organizations in the world who are dropouts. And that's one of those things where I always think about in terms of some of these people. Although they were given those or grew up with those initial limitations, somehow, somewhere, the bubble burst.
Right.
And within their consciousness and within their thinking or thought paradigm, if you will, the limits were taken off, the chains were off, and they just went to places, they tested it, and that's how they were able to build up these companies. That's how they were able to do that. And it was not necessarily because in that moment, they said, hey, I'm going to build one of the biggest companies in the world. It wasn't about that. It was just like, hey.
Probably like, fuck this shit, I'm not going to work for the man.
Yeah. Or I'm just like, hey, let me see if I can, let me see what I can do.
Right.
Right?
Test
like maybe mess up something, maybe hack into something else, just for fun, right? Can I do this? What's it like? And that kind of openness to explore and discover. It could be different formats, right? It could be trying a martial art, like Jiu Jitsu, my favorite, that you would never imagine yourself doing, because maybe you're that weak kid that was always picked on, and you're used to getting beat up, right, and being bullied. So why would you, in your right mind, try to go into a martial art? Because you're just gonna get beaten more, but with people who know how to beat you up even, more severely. Why would you do that? But some of these people, they got, somehow they had their bubbles burst. And they went into some of these things, and I keep on coming across stories and people who go through that process. So I guess to kind of wrap it up, that thought is that I find that I meet a lot of different people who are in 9-to-5s and in maybe family-ran businesses that they've taken they've grown up with and taken over, and I just sometimes I want to shake them and just say, hey, you don't have to give up this. You can go and try out something. Right. Like, take a break, right? Take a summer holiday or something. You owe it to yourself to explore what what's outside the bubble. But to see if you can, burst your bubble a little bit. And all those things that, you want to, that you imagine one day that you want to be able to do.
One day should be today.
Right? Your one day has to be today.
Exactly.
And I think that's really challenging sometimes, because we're moving so quickly, and especially if you're working at a high pressure job, which many people are, not getting enough sleep, maybe not have the right diet,
drained.
you're stuck in that.
Yeah.
right? You're always at 0 or +1. And you don't realize that you could be at a +500. You'll never go there. And eventually, once you're somewhere and you do the same thing long enough, some people will break. A lot of people will break in different ways. Some people will just give up and just be like, this is my life. I'm just going to go. This is what I got.
It's a miserable life.
And some people will break in other ways. Some people will break positively. They're like, all right, I don't want this. I know that I don't want this. This is not the right way to live for me.
Right.
And they'll do something crazy. And they'll realize, holy shit, like, I wasn't living my life. I had all of this, but I didn't see it because I was stuck. So for me, I just, I urge anybody who's kind of like, hey, I kind of want to do this, but I'm putting it off, right? To just go do it. Like, sign up. Take that first step. Right? You don't have to do everything. Like, first day, if you want to start jogging, just put on your shoes. That's it. I read this somewhere. And then second day, put on your shoes and close your door. Go outside into the hallway and then come back if you really want to. Third day, right? Go downstairs with it. And eventually, you'll be running.
Yeah, to that person, I'll probably just send them a David Goggins link.
Exactly. Or just get David Goggins to show up.
Goggins.
Like, listen, motherfucker.
Listen, motherfucker, you can't even put your shoes on and get out the fucking door. You have to break it down in 5 fucking days. What's wrong with you?
David Goggins. What a guy, man. He's so
that's
legendary.
Like one extreme of how you can take things, right?
He's a G. Yeah.
But yeah, no, all of this, like, from a broader perspective, is like we're blessed to have these opportunities and the freedom to make these choices and decisions. And in a way, a lot of people don't challenge themselves, and that's where the unfulfillment comes from.
Yeah.
So if you're not challenged, if you're not pushing yourself creatively or to your utmost highest potential, which is constantly being set higher and higher depending on where you're catering that energy towards, you're gonna get bored. And if you're doing the same thing 9 to 5 routine, eventually, you will. Your mind is gonna go crazy because that's doing the same thing repeated over and over in an unhappy fashion. Is gonna lead to insanity, like, because that's a prison system, right? And it's like you're not doing anything for the sake of your joy and fulfillment. You're doing it for the sake of whatever it is, like paying bills and whatnot, or being stuck in a way. But like I said, we're blessed in the sense that we have those options and those avenues available, but it takes a lot of energy, courage, and conquering that state of mind where if you fail, you don't give up, you continue the process. And that's okay. Getting used to that feeling of not being successful every time. And that's something like I preached to my younger brothers and stuff like that when we were growing up, in terms of like, whether it was like, wait, I don't know how to draw, I'm not creative or whatnot. I'm like, why do you say that? Like, do you think I was born creative? No. It's like if you put time towards anything, whatever is programming, a technical skill, drawing, being artsy, like whatever it is, over time you'll develop those skills. And when we grow up, we're kind of taught that, like you're kind of catered towards like one thing, or like if I wanted to learn the piano, like back in the day, they'd be like, okay, I don't have access to a piano, like if I ask my parents, can I go to piano school, they're gonna laugh at me, like, what the fuck is... So it's like those are not options that are readily available, so it's like kind of out of my realm of possibilities. Whereas in today's day and age, I can order a fucking $50 piano from Amazon and then go on YouTube and watch a tutorial and learn
show up in 2 hours.
And then learn how to play. So there's infinite potential. Like, everything's so readily available in today's day and age. So for people that are not taking and jumping on those opportunities, or like those dreams or goals that they have, it's kind of crazy. But I guess it's for people like you and I and like other people to inspire and like poke them a little bit, be like, hey, wake up, like what is it that you want to do, right? Don't you want to be happy? Like, don't you want to be fulfilled? It's like, look, this is possible if you want to put your mind to it. And I always make the comparison to like people that want to get fit or go to the gym. They're always like, I need this. They're always like coming from a state of mind where they're lacking something, where it's like, no, you already have it, like just do it. Like, as soon as you're at the gym, but it's like conquering that state of fear, right? Because they're afraid. They're like, if I go to the gym, and you put it beautifully, like in the beginning, in terms of like someone who is afraid of getting their ass kicked and going to Jiu Jitsu, right? It's like, no, you're going to start at ground zero, but eventually you're going to become good at whatever it is. And I remember the first time I went to the gym, like this was like maybe 10, 11 years ago.
Wow.
And there was guys like doing curls with 45-pound dumbbells, and I was there with the 10-pound, and I was like, holy shit, like I was embarrassed in a way. But then I knew in the back of my mind, I'm like, no, the more I come, the stronger I'll become. And then now I'm at that point where it's like I surpassed those guys too, but I don't even think about that. It's just become a part of my lifestyle now. So instilling those habits and those type of mindsets becomes a lifestyle where people that struggle to go to the gym, I don't even think about it. It's like if I don't go, I'll get depressed and like upset. I'll be like, I need to go. Or it's not even like, oh fuck, I need to go to the gym or whatever. So, and then being able to put yourself in that type of life situation, and then kind of pushing yourself to what's next. All right, what's next? So in that frame of mind, and when you have that type of attitude towards life in general, like once again you become player one. It's like that red pill mentality where it's like in the Matrix, like you realize how things work and you're like, okay, I have the power to do whatever the fuck I want to do. Exactly. I just need to execute, take action.
That's exactly it. And I feel like it's really important also to know in a deep way that it starts with you. It's just like, they're always talking about happiness. It starts with you. You can't be with other people if you're unhappy with yourself.
Right. Self-love is very important.
And I think, and I hear this self-love stuff, like whenever anybody says self-love, I kind of, I take a deep breath and be like, that sounds like a hashtag,
sounds cheesy.
Sounds cheesy. But it's exactly that, because like you said earlier, it's like, oh, I'm not good at this, I'm not good at that. You know how sometimes I catch some of my friends or loved ones when they're just like, oh man, I'm so stupid. I'm like, I get pissed. I'm just like, what'd you say? Would you call him my friend? Right? They're like, what are you talking about? Right?
So take care of yourself.
You can't be talking to yourself and like, I'm so stupid. Like you can't. The moment that it comes out of your mouth, it's like I think about myself as two people, your inside voice or whatever you want to call that, your soul,
subconscious, whatever it is.
You have to be your own best friend. So when you fall in the real world, whatever you want to call that,
you can be like, yo, we got this.
It's like, hey, it's okay, right? But it's also important not just to be, the person who picks you up, but also the person who holds you up to a really high standard and says, you know what? You might have won here, or you might have done well here, but you didn't give your best effort.
Exactly.
And so because of that, is it like, understand what's a win, what's a loss, like in different ways. Just because you got the first place trophy doesn't necessarily mean that you're satisfied with yourself. And just because you lost and you didn't even get on the podium at all doesn't mean that you lost either. Right. I think that's really important. And not only that, like, create your own paradigm and rules of engagement and your own standards as well, right? And also understand that, I think it's really important to understand, especially when it comes to fitness, that in your physical health, that sometimes what other people do isn't necessarily something that you'll resonate with. And what I found for myself was that I've been playing hockey for a long time, and I've been coaching quite a bit as well. But I hadn't been playing for a while. In the last few years, I've started playing a lot more. And for me, when you love doing something, it's like when you're playing music, when you're doing art or anything like that, something that you're passionate about. You know how like you go into flow state, right? You go into flow state. Like there's the guy who termed it Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, and he has an incredible book on that. But it's the idea that really like you're
that's where the best creative ideas come from. That's where your optimal self flourishes, right?
Exactly. And you lose time and you're enjoying it, and you're just like, it's incredible. And sometimes you want to find those activities, maybe going to the gym and lifting weights isn't your thing, but maybe Jiu Jitsu is, right? Where it's like you don't realize, you're not thinking, you're like, I'm exercising, but then you get home and you're like, I can't move. Or maybe it's hockey, maybe it's swimming's a great one, jogging, biking, like all those things. Maybe taking a walk or long hikes. Like long hikes are incredible, especially when it comes to like breathing and whatnot.
Right.
You go out there, you're a part of nature, and I think that's a huge part too. Like get yourself back home, which is nature, every once in a while.
It's just ways to get yourself out of that neurotic headspace at the end of the day. Like becoming more present and aware, and like just seeing things for how they are. Because like when you're a kid, I feel like like you don't have all these stresses and worry, like things that you're worried about, anxieties, fears, insecure, whatever it is. As you grow older, you start to pile up this entire database of, and then it disconnects you from enjoying things as they are.
Yeah.
So, and as we get older, it becomes harder and harder to detach and unplug from that kind of stuff, and that's why people, I don't know, take psychedelics or like go to these retreats or look for ways to like make themselves present. But yeah, it's like trying to hack away at those things and trim down and optimize yourself on a mind and body level. It's very important. Yeah.
And you can't just focus in on one thing. That's where some people they do incredible at work, but home life isn't good. Right? Or they do it at the detriment of their health or relationships or whatever else it is. And like money's great, right? But you can't take it with you if you're dead.
Exactly.
Right? Or you can't trade it for health either. Right? So just again, we get caught up in it.
Like we keep coming on the subject in terms of like the internet has like a plethora of information, and when it comes to all these kind of things too, there's a lot of people that you can look up to in that regard, where they open your mind and expand your perspective. So most people, in a sense, they might be closed-minded too, where they don't. I usually call them perspective refreshers. Like I've sent you long articles or whatever in terms of like just thought processes, whether it's philosophers or things like that, of ways of thinking. And it's a perspective refresher, because like after you read that, you're like, I didn't think of that way.
Or you need a reminder.
Or you need a reminder, right? So it's kind of like mental hygiene, right? Like we brush our teeth every morning. When it comes to the mind too, we need to treat it like a day-to-day thing, and then you'll notice that you'll start to become more loving and more kind and more less reactive and less, I don't know, like whatever type of person you are, like you'll become more zen and enjoy things for how they are. Start to appreciate things that you've never even noticed before. Like sometimes after I take a cold shower and I have breathing exercises, I'll be walking down the street and things will catch my eye that I've walked down the street many times before, but I've never paid any mind to, I don't know, the 4th floor where there's a hair salon and I can literally see people getting their hair cut, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. That's always been there, but I've never looked at, like I've always looked in that direction, but I've never noticed it. Or
you were in your head.
But that's the thing, you're in your head, right? Like after work, whatever, like whatever's going on. So life can pass you by like that if you're not awake, like, and you're sleepwalking through life. So in a sense, like you have to surround yourself by people that kind of give you those perspective, like refreshers and reminders, where it's like, hey, wake up, like things are not that bad actually. Like could it be worse? We're floating in space on a fucking rock,
giant rock,
which is, that in itself is so humbling, right? Like sometimes when people get very dramatic or I literally send them an image of like, there's like, it's like a 50 gigapixel image of the Andromeda galaxy. And it just, it's like all these little dots, and each one is like a solar system with like planets, and it's like just sand. And I'm like, we're somewhere in there, and I'm like, who gives a fuck if like you didn't get a raise, or like you don't, this guy said something to you, don't let it ruin your day. That's stupid. Like we're so insignificant in the grand scheme of things, and it kind of like, that's probably a form of meditation too, like kind of seeing everything from a large scale, where it's like you're not the center of the universe. You somewhat are in terms of your perspective and how you perceive reality, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Like things could be worse.
Oh, for sure. And also just not carrying things with you. I have a lot of trouble with that, right? Because I think, if you're somebody who loves hard, you also hurt really hard as well. Because you're just, that's the same thing.
I'm the same way. But at the same time, I have that appreciation for it. So when I do have those downs or whatever, I'm like, you know what? I accept this for what it is. It'll pass.
Yeah.
Well, because I have these emotions associated with, like you said, if you love hard, like you fall hard, or then you won't be able to express those other emotions as deeply. So
Exactly.
it's like there's a polarity to everything in that regard.
For sure.
But no, that's dope. A lot of. So you mentioned lucid dreaming earlier too, right?
Yeah.
So did you practice any of that, or did you just by fluke?
You know what? Not this time, but I remember. I think I was a teenager or something, and or maybe in my 20s. What was that movie that came out? Waking Life. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I think so.
You gotta watch that.
There's
you gotta watch that.
And
yeah.
then I guess
Inception
talks about it a little bit too.
Yeah,
But that's
Inception
more
as well.
of a
yeah, but you definitely have
fantasy-based.
to check out Waking Life. Incredible. I think I want to say Keanu Reeves was in that as well, but it was a great movie. And from there, they were talking about lucid dreaming. So I remember I got this book on lucid dreaming, on how to train yourself to lucid dream. You go through a certain number of steps every single time before you sleep, and then you have indicators where you're always like, I don't know, similar to Inception, I guess, where you'll do something within that dream, and you'll do something within that dream once you're dreaming to just check to see what's going on. If you're able to do that, or if you're not able to do that, that can give you an indicator whether you're actually dreaming or you're not, right? And I found that for a while there, it was really, really good. I was able to control things, and I just enjoy flying in my dreams. That's my favorite thing.
That's crazy.
Right? Like, and it's more like floating. Not going fast or anything, but just the ability to kind of like take a couple steps and just start going upward. Like a
So how long did it take you to be able to acquire this skill and like slip into a lucid dream?
Oh man, it was a long time ago, but I can't remember. I don't think it took me very long. I think it was like a couple weeks.
Okay.
You just have to, it's like anything, you just have to kind of practice it.
Yeah.
But as far as lucid dreaming, when it comes to eating meat, like it just happened. Like, I don't know, like I was just very aware of the fact that I was dreaming.
You were dreaming.
So, but it doesn't always come that way, right? So.
Yeah, for me, when I was growing up as a child, I always used to have sleep paralysis.
Oh, no way. I've had that a couple of times. I didn't even know about that.
So when I was a kid, maybe, I think from when I remember, it was like kindergarten up until like elementary school, like, I would always have it, and some days it would be like almost every single night. And I'd be sleeping next to my father, and I wake up it was always at around like 2, 3, and I guess it was like in between the sleep cycles, like the 2 sleep cycles.
Right.
And I wake up, and then you're just stuck, you can't move anything. I couldn't open my eyes either. And you just feel this like tremendous force crushing your chest.
Yeah.
And you can feel it's like the most pure fear. Like it's hard to explain, but it's like pure fear.
Oh, I totally know.
And so you're going into panic, your heart's beating like crazy, you're trying to move as much as you can, but you can't, and you just feel like there's this dark, ominous presence in the room with you. Or like something that's the fear that's associated with that. It's hard to explain.
Did you ever have your eyes open though? When
no, thank God, because apparently you can hallucinate.
Because that's what I had, but I didn't have it closed. I never had it closed.
I would always have them with my eyes closed, thank God.
But what did you like? Did you, when you knew that there was a
I would just feel something getting like closer and like, or something like coming in the room, or and I've never had my eyes open, but
I've had my eyes open, and you try to like.
So just did you see anything?
It's really like I just felt like I couldn't like make any noises.
Right.
And then I couldn't move, although like I was trying to kind of rock back and forth. But I was in my room. So like, and I recognized it. And when I woke up, I guess shortly after, I was in that same room, and everything still looked the same, as if I was in my kind of sleep paralysis state. And I've had that a few times, not as often as you, maybe once a year or something. I skipped a few years, but yeah, last year I had it, and I was genuinely freaked out by that.
Yeah, it is a very scary experience.
I couldn't like scream out, I couldn't make any noises, and I was like, is this me dying? Like,
yeah, it literally feels like you're dying.
But then I went into like kind of this, trying to break it down logically, and I was like, okay, this has happened before, so let me try a few things. Let me try calming down a little bit, and trying to like get my mind clear. Do you know what I mean? Because when you're sleeping and when you're dreaming, you're not, your brain's not clear, despite the fact that you might be able to control some things. It's like you're watching it happen as opposed to having control. So I started doing that.
It's so weird in of itself,
right? Like
being able to, it's like I'm watching my mind. It's like, wait, what
the crap? Right? I think
like,
it's
what
awesome
is
though.
I then the perceiver? It's like, what is that? Consciousness.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, so I would have these sleep paralysis. I guess when they would happen to me, these situations, and then my father would be sleeping next to me, and I'd try to like nudge him or like try to get him to wake me up.
Right.
And I'd burst out, like just get up, panting, go to the washroom, wash my face.
Right.
And then lie back down. And whenever I'd start to slip into that sleep paralysis, I'd hear like it's kind of like binaural beats where he's like wom, 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 and it would get like faster and deeper, and then I'll be like, oh fuck, it's happening again, and it's literally your mind going into sleep mode again.
That's crazy.
So at the time, internet and stuff wasn't prominent. Like maybe I was like 15 or 16 years old, and it started happening again. And then I was like, let me look this up, but I would look it up at school. So prior to that, when I was like 8 or 9, going back, I asked my father one day. And he's like, oh, that's just a chapuska. And I'm like, what's a chapuska? It's like, it's just some demon lady that crawls on the walls and sits on your chest. They're like, don't sleep on your, like, laying back on your, like, flat on your back with your chest up and arms on your chest. They're like, don't sleep like that.
Right.
Or that demon lady's going to come and sit on you.
But is this like kind of like
it's like a
legend?
superstition, but they believe in it, apparently.
Right.
And then, so as an 8 or 9-year-old kid, I started shitting myself. I was like, I'm not going to go to sleep anymore. And at the time, it was like I would recite every passage from our scriptures that I knew as a kid, being like, God save me, I'm fucking, there's a demon lady sitting on my chest, crushing me. And then, so going forward to when I was 16 or so, I started doing research, and then on...
So like, you started getting that again when you were 15, 16?
Yeah, so... Okay. And same
like
thing. Nightly, yeah. It would happen like consistently throughout the night at the same time. And then I started doing the research again, and yeah, for like in all various different cultures, they believe that it is a demon that sits on your chest. And there's there's like a couple images on Google, like they're very scary, like people illustrating like what the demon looks like. And I was like, oh my God. But then I did further research into it, and I realized it's just so what happens is your body releases a specific chemical when you go into sleep mode, so you don't act out your dreams. So you're kind of paralyzed.
Right.
So if you're in a dream and you want to like run or throw a punch, sometimes you kind of feel slow and you get sluggish and stuck. Yeah. That's because your mind is trying to like get your physical body to do it, but you're paralyzed.
That's cool.
So sometimes I guess your consciousness wakes up before your body actually gets up.
Yeah.
And that's what sleep paralysis is in a nutshell. And when I got into meditation and stuff, probably after college, like that's when I dived really deep into it. This was like maybe 10 years ago. Yeah. I started listening to binaural beats, and same thing, I came across some like lucid dreaming related material. And then I read into it. I forgot who the author was of one book, but so he went into like in-depth stories of how he had like a near-death experience, and he was flying over his bed on his deathbed in the hospital, but then he came back to, and then he mentioned to the doctor, and they're like, that's normal. And then one day he woke up at nighttime realizing that he felt as if he was lying down on the floor. Right. And he was confused. He's like, wait, why am I lying on the floor? And he realized that there was a fixture next to him, and then he saw that it was his light on the ceiling, and then he's like, he's like, okay, I must be dreaming, or like this feels too real to be a dream. Right. So he turned around and he saw his wife sleeping with some man, and he freaked the fuck out, and then only to realize that it was him, and so he thought he died. Right. And he tried to go back in his body, and he started panicking, and he was so eventually he woke up and he's like, what the fuck was that? Yeah. And then he goes into detail. I'll put the link in the description if people are interested in. I can't recall who the author is at this moment, but yeah, then he goes into trying to prove to scientists that he can pop out of his physical body. Wow. And have those were called like more out of body experiences, or the astral projections. So I was fascinated with that, and I just wanted to do lucid dreaming. Right. So I started practicing lucid dreaming again, and then there was like wild and mild, like wake induced lucid dreaming. mild is like when you're in the dream and you do like you look at your hand if you have 6 fingers, or you look at a watch and if the time is wonky, or you knock on the door and if your hand goes through the door or something's off, then you're like, I'm dreaming, and then you'll wake up in your dream. So what I would try to do was the rope method. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No.
So you lie down, and like as you're going to sleep, you're aware of your body slowly slipping into a sleep state. And what's funny is your body kind of tests to see if you're awake. Like your nose will start to tingle.
I know it.
And it's weird because you're like, no, I'm not gonna itch it. It's like I'm sleeping, and then your body's like, okay, he's probably sleeping. And then your limbs start to go numb. So like your right leg will go numb, and then the left one will go numb. And then your hand will go numb, and then the left hand, and then you're like, okay, I feel like I'm just a torso right now. And your chest will go numb, and then eventually your entire body goes numb. And then it's weird because like I've had weird experiences where my consciousness felt like literally like an orb on top of my head, like on top of my forehead. And I'm like, this feels weird as fuck, because usually we associate who we are as a human like with your limbs, because there's always input. So what happens when you take all that input away? What are you? It's like, what, a floating ball of consciousness? Because that's what it felt like. I felt like a fucking orb hovering above my head, and I'm like, this is weird. So that being said, it's like, okay, now I have to try to physically but non-physically pull on a rope, like the sensation, and eventually you can pop out and have an astral projection, like a out-of-body experience. But if you want to do a lucid dreaming, you just get into a lucid dream. You'd stay in that state and like let yourself fall asleep, like your mind fall asleep, while being conscious. So I was like, okay, this is easy. My body's falling asleep. Next thing you know, I start hearing boom, 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 and I'm like, oh my god, this is fucking fucking demon ladies coming, and it gave me that post-traumatic stress from when I was a kid, and I was like, fuck this, no, I don't want to do it. And then so it would get to the point where my body felt like it was like violently tilting left and right, like my bed was shaking, like the physical sensations, and I was like, what the fuck is this? And then I'd wake myself up. I'm like, oh my god, like this is weird. This is not normal, right? Because you've never experienced anything like that. Like, it's not something you. While you're going to sleep, you never like. When I go to sleep, I fucking do cartwheels and stuff. My astral body. And then I fall asleep. It's like, no, you just like slip into an unconscious state. So it was such a foreign experience for me, where I freaked out. And I'm like, that's so weird. And then so I took a break. After a while, and then I started practicing it again, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna conquer this fear. And then so there's one day where I did it, and there was another method in which you just focus on like the imagery behind in your mind, and I would always see like cityscapes, just your mind like just showing you random cityscapes and silhouettes. All of a sudden, like it became very, very, very bright, like white, and then next thing you know, I was walking on gravel on top of a mountain, and I could smell pine trees. And it's like clear blue sky, and I was like on top of a mountain, like hiking. And I was like, oh my god, I'm fucking dreaming right now, but I'm awake. And I'm like, can I fly? So I started hopping, and with each hop, I would like gain more air, and like I felt like a feather almost. And I got so excited, and like that feeling was so like surreal. I woke up like, and I was like, fuck.
You blew your load.
My lucid dreaming load was blown. But yeah, that kind of stuff is very interesting when you think about it in terms of if you do master the art of lucid dreaming. Apparently, like monks and gurus, they train people just to conquer fears. And but yeah, why wouldn't you want to go into a dream and do whatever you wanted to do? It's kind of pretty cool if you want to fly and like, I don't know.
I can't remember if I asked you. Have you been floating before?
Yeah,
do you? Because I love floating. And apparently there's ways that you can float and practice some lucid dreaming techniques. I haven't really read into it, but I've heard about that. Have you ever?
I've done. Well, in total 5 sessions. The first time I went, I had the most profound experience, because that's when I was the most into like meditation and like releasing and letting go. So my state of mind was really, I was prepared for it. And I went to a place on the Danforth. It was like a H2O float spa, I think. The only So when I went in, it literally looks like a Dragon Ball Z chamber. Like
No.
one of those time chamber, like the things that in space where they.
Wow.
So you pull down the latch, and I remember when I got in there. So you're fully naked, salt water. You're floating.
Yeah.
Temperature is the same. Of the water is the same as your skin. So is the air. So you lose all sensation of everything. And so I got brought onto this by Joe Rogan as well. It was like the way he explained it. I was like, I definitely need to check this out.
Yeah.
So I was doing it, and then the humidity from my breath, I guess, was causing like precipitation on the top of the chamber door.
Right.
And then it was getting hot, and I was starting to be like, you know what, I need to open the latch.
Yeah.
Like, this was like maybe 15 minutes in. I was like, just open the latch, like, get some air, and then I was like, okay, no, don't worry about it. And I'm like, no, okay, it's getting hot, let's open the latch. And then all of a sudden I'm like, don't worry about it, like, just take it easy. And then I'm like, wait a second, who the fuck is talking to who right now? Right? And then at that moment, my mind just went boop, like completely quiet.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the fuck? So then I was floating there for like 15, 20 minutes or so. Like, both perception of time is like odd,
different,
like different. You can't tell how much time has passed.
Especially your first time. It felt like eternity. Did it feel like a long time to you the first time?
It felt like a long time until I slipped into like that trance-like state. Then it just felt like fast.
Right.
So I was floating. I couldn't see. I had my eyes open for a while. I started doing relaxation techniques, and I noticed how tight my traps were.
Yeah.
So I was trying to relax that, and then and then it's crazy because all of these random memories from like childhood start to surface, like experiences that I enjoyed like as a kid, and like things that I've never even thought about. So those type of memories, like very vivid, like surfacing, and I was like, well, this is weird. Like, why am I seeing these type of things? It's interesting. And then I slipped into like a very deep trance-like state, and then I was like, so I've done deep meditations before, and then I start to ask myself questions.
Mm-hmm.
And it's weird because you kind of get answers on a subconscious level.
Yes.
And then you feel like a weird surge of emotions that follow through afterwards.
Yeah.
So I'll be like, okay, what's the point of everything that I'm doing at the time? This was like 6-7 years ago.
Right.
And it'll just be like that's irrelevant. Just do it for the sake of love. And then I'm like, woof, like your nervous system gets flushed. Like I'll get goosebumps.
Yeah.
Like it's interesting because like I'm half asleep, half awake. Like just asking my deeper self or whatever you want to call it, my subconscious, all these questions.
Yeah.
And then like a little bit of that, and time passed by. The jets come back on. The craziest thing was like as soon as I got out, everything felt like super HD.
Yeah.
Agreed,
yeah.
My senses were like on another level. Like when you come out and you take a shower, I could feel everything, like hyper present.
Yes.
The woman that was working there, she gave me like a ginger tea. Like I could smell it, like it's potent. I went outside and I remembered like to this day, like the Danforth was like after it rained and it was like 11:30 p.m. Like it was one of the last floats, and I could see all the way down the street. Like usually we're very like our perspective or like how we observe things is like maybe 1 meter, 2 meters from you. I looked down the street, I could see all the way down and like all the traffic lights, the textures of the bricks and stuff, and it looked beautiful. I'm like, I'm awake right now. Because there's no mind, and I'm like, if this is a state that I can attain like on the daily, like life would be fucking sick.
But did you feel like, how did you feel, like really happy, like really calm?
I felt
what were
calm.
some of the
Calm, just very zen and like chill.
Yeah.
And like loving and like appreciative of like everything, like in general. But yeah, it was a good experience. And then the following times that I went, I can't say I had a similar experience. Excuse me. But I guess it's just in terms of like being mentally prepared.
Yeah.
And being able to let go and relax to that extent.
Yeah, because it's challenging to kind of be there by yourself, and there's almost no distractions. The only thing that's distracting yourself is yourself.
Right.
Right, and I love it when you're floating in, because initially when you go in, you're still kind of swaying from side to side a little bit. But the moment that it sets and you relax into that set, it's like, I think I always describe it as being, you know, those Jellos that you get in stores with like the cream on the bottom, like you see some of those desserts.
Yeah.
it's like that, and you're just like a little thing inside the jello, and
you're part of the.
You're part of the.
Yeah, because you don't know, your body doesn't know where it is in this, so your mind is trying to perceive what you are as.
It's trying to keep control. It's like, what is going on? You're supposed to be touching something. Right. You know, you're supposed to be standing on something or sitting on something.
Funny visualization.
Yeah, you're just like
jello.
You're inside the jello, not even on top of the jello. Because if you're on top, you can actually feel like it below you. But once it sets, I just think that it's like very rarely do we feel that, and apparently it's supposed to emulate or simulate or be similar to the womb, and that's so like people don't realize that you pick up information when you're in the womb as well, and there's like certain kind of triggers that you have, maybe it's chemicals and whatnot in your brain that associates with that, and you think differently. And I love the fact that how often are we in pure silence? Like even right here, we can hear different, like you can hear electricity, you can hear the city a little bit, and also pitch black darkness, and I just think that it's an incredible thing that everybody should try, and I found that it was super beneficial. I've experimented quite a bit in doing it different ways with different goals. Sometimes I just try to let my brain like be as free as possible and not think about anything specific, and let my brain create designs and like little, like whatever it comes out with. I'm just watching the theater of the mind, if you will.
Yeah,
and it does awesome. Some really incredible like graphic design, 3D design, like it just
cool.
and that blows me away, because if you tell me to draw that, I can't do it, but it's inside there. It's stored inside. It's not coming from anywhere else. And that's super cool.
You know what's going to be crazy when, I don't know, maybe, like who knows how long it's going to take, but when they'll be able to plug something into your mind and project those things into a visual display, like everything that you described. Yeah. And then record that data. That'll be fucking crazy.
Well, apparently you can already create music. They'll like stick a whole bunch of things in you, or on top of you,
on top,
inside, on top, wherever, and then there's music that comes out.
That's interesting.
I freaked out. Like, what's this gonna sound like?
So how many times have you floated? Going back to floats?
I probably floated about, I want to say like 30 times or so.
Jeez.
Yeah, I really, really enjoy it, and I found that when I was in just, when you're feeling pure sheer panic and anxiety, just like just go there, and I find that it's actually a challenge. Sometimes you have a great float, right? Everything's cool. Most of the time when you're anxious and when you're in that fight or flight state,
it's hard to let go.
And if the whole entire thing is a battle, the whole hour, you're just like, fuck, is it going to be over soon? How many minutes am I in? I wonder how many, like, am I 20 minutes in, right? And you're just fighting with yourself. And earlier when I was going through that, I was like, oh, this isn't enjoyable. Like, maybe I should come back when I'm more relaxed. And I'm just having that inner dialogue, and you basically force yourself through it, because you're like, hey, I paid for this, might as well just stay in here and try to get the most of it. But what I realized was that on those really challenging days, once you come out, you actually feel amazing still. You might not be 100% in terms of like, you're not back to being like 100%, but we're rarely 100%, but you do feel amazing when you come out. And
the mind is an interesting thing in that regard. Like, the more resistance there is, usually if you conquer that resistance, you feel that much better, right?
For sure.
It's like when, I don't know, for example, like some days where you're tired as fuck and you don't want to do something, or you don't want to go to the gym, or you don't want to work on something, but then you conquer that, and you're like, you know what, I'm gonna make you my bitch, and like, we're gonna blow through these obstacles, that whatever the mind is, and then you kind of reach that flow state and that satori because you conquered that. But it's not easy though sometimes. And
sometimes you have incredible performances on the nights that you're like, I'm either injured, I'm kind of tired, but somehow something comes out, and I always I'm always curious about like, what is that trigger? What are some of the things that are happening for that too?
It's easier said than done, but I guess surrendering and being just in that present moment, that's where the greatest optimal version of yourself flourishes in a way.
Well, you know what? Actually, I was going to mention that we were talking about breathing earlier, and I found that just lately, incorporating 50 breaths, I usually go like 30 or 50 deep breaths. You have to do it outside. I feel like when you're doing it indoors, you're not getting the quality of air, and especially when it's cold outside, you're not getting that presence. Like when you're warm and you're sitting on your couch kind of doing it, it's okay, but you're kind of getting 50% of it. But when you're outside, you're in kind of that cold, fresh air that kind of makes your nostrils hurt a little bit when it's coming in because it's so cold. Those are the ones. And if you do it with your eyes closed, like it has that similar kind of result as after you've floated, and everything just seems like it's a HD. And when you do it with your closed eyes, you're doing it during the day, and you open up your eyes, just everything is more. And I found that as far as performance in terms of any sort of sporting type events, or even just thinking, like that's why some people like to go for walks. Right? That's kind of like the low impact version. Like you come back and you're fresh, and you're able to your focus is acute, and so I love that. I've been incorporating that as
cold
much
showers
as possible.
are pretty powerful in that regard too.
I love those.
Like
Sometimes.
there's some days when like I try to do them every single day. And the days where I don't want to do them the most, that's when I'm like, I literally tell myself, I'm like, you need this more than you do the other days when you're ready for it. And then what happens is, and I notice it's like such an instant change in terms of thought process, because things that usually require, like I mentioned before, the resistance aspects, like that, like I don't want to do that, or like fuck, I need to do this. It gets rid of that completely. Like I'll just start doing things without even second guessing that that anxiousness or the stress associated of how my mind was perceiving what needed to be done before. Like the task list is like, okay, I'm tired, I have to do this. After the cold shower just come out, it's like, all right, what do I need to do? Oh, boom, done. Take this, done.
That's
boom,
it.
Done. Sit down on the computer, do some more work, boom, done. And then it's like, okay, I feel great now. Like I actually accomplished. And that's the power of the mind, right? So it's like, it's actually pretty fucking crazy. Like how much potential we have. It's just unlocking that potential in like many ways in terms of how we think about things and how we go about our days. But yeah, like after this podcast, we'll do some Wim Hof breathing exercises. We are indoors. We might crank open the window, and if you want like a little bit more oxygen than usual, you're closer to the plant. Might want one plant right now, so we're good to go. But yeah, I think we've covered a lot of subjects. We're probably gonna have many more podcasts down the line. So
for sure.
But yeah, I appreciate you for coming in. Much love, brother.
Ditto, man.
And cheers to inspiring and motivating people.
You gotta keep on spreading that message.
Many medias and ways, shapes, and forms, because just building that community and tribe of like-minded individuals. But yeah, all right.
Awesome. Peace.
For you.